Angel, up to the stage.
Right.
Yes, you're on.
Okay, so yeah, here's my verbose title of this, but I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit of a story because I'm not your normal lawyer. So so the story of how I became or launched my entrepreneurial practice is that story I'm going to share with you guys today in a little bit about that. So that point work. Technical difficulties. This is the name of. There we go. So here's my agenda. I'm going to tell a little bit about my background. I'll share current state and then looking ahead. So, once upon a time, I was actually a very miserable lawyer working in a law firm. I didn't become a lawyer to do what I found in law firms. I actually was a very idealistic person. I thought I was going to be able to help people by becoming an attorney. And when I found myself in a law firm environment, I was surrounded by actually a bunch of miserable other attorneys, and everything was driven by billable hours and transactions. And I put on the slide, no smiles and laughter, because the staff that was surrounding me always loved being outside my office because I would smile and I would laugh. And I was constantly actually looking to find solutions for people and how could I, even in this environment, still help people, because I looked at my job as an attorney as actually advising people to access things that they wanted in their life, building a business, or to prevent problems through estate planning. Or at that time I was doing quite a bit of litigation, but nobody wins when you do litigation. So the point is, how do we find a win-win, which is how do we find a way to avoid litigation at all costs before actually getting into it. But this approach was constantly resulting in there being less transactions in that law firm that I worked in. And so I kept being told I was doing it wrong and that I was losing them money. And so I did very soon leave that particular firm. I actually moved from Minnesota to the West Coast thinking maybe I could find different lawyers on the West Coast. But what I found when I moved to the West Coast, lawyers and the culture of law, at least in law firm practice, was the same no matter where I went. So the universe gifted me the opportunity to leave the practice of law. And I had joined Seattle Children's in an alternative legal career. I was hired on with about skills I didn't even realize I had in project management. But by taking on that alternative job, what I did was open up what I call a side gig of open door legal space. And this was a virtual law office before Zoom even existed. So it was a little ahead of my time. And I spent a lot of time doing pro bono and helping people here and there in different things while I then worked my corporate job. And in that time, I had always been a practicing Buddhist and kind of sought things outside of the normal mundane to inspire me and to move on. And actually the finding of the job outside of the legal career, because I didn't realize I had any skills prior to that, it moved me into actually seeking further and actually joining a spiritual path and becoming a guide in that spiritual path over a 10-year practice. And what I found, though, is in that spiritual community, there are lots of actual legal needs because lots of people were entrepreneurs and running their own businesses and doing these things. And so I found myself help more and more people in my community, which then encouraged me, and through other work that I had done to grow my own strength of being able to actually launch a business on my own, that pushed me to eventually leave corporate and launch my own law office again, because I realized I could actually practice law how I wanted to practice if I did it completely and utterly on my own. So I didn't have to go to a law firm and practice in that way. Which then led me to launch this law firm based on me, wholly me, being completely authentic and approaching things from what I call an abundance approach, which is how do we find win-win in all things. But I actually launched my law practice straight up March 3rd, 2020. And so What I was given, though, this is amazing gift of time, so that I could spend a lot of time learning what is called the new law business model, which is a specific type of approach to running a law firm that gave me both business training, legal training, and estate planning, and mindset training to be an actual happy lawyer. It was an amazing program that I was able to invest a significant amount of time, energy, and money, because actually I had tons of clients during the first year of the pandemic. But then I relaunched my law office from being landlord tenant and kind of anything that came in the door to helping people doing specifically estate planning based off this training that I received. And so now, fully launching Latterell Law, my focus is 100% education and service. My job is to be a trusted advisor and to empower families with information, and doing community outreach, teaching them about how we can, how estate planning isn't just planning for one's death, which no one wants to think about, but it can actually be life and legacy planning. How do we build a foundation of abundance for our family, give ourselves peace of mind so that if something does happen, like you have things put in place, but how do we actually use these tools of the law to create containers, this is coming from a metaphysical training, to manifest what we want in life, which a lot of people don't think about, thinking about your death as a way of thinking about life, but a life well lived is a death well met. And we use these things in estate planning, but a lot of what I do is just educating individuals to the possibilities of using this planning, and preventing all of the negative things that can happen when we don't plan. So what I do is I have to throw a really wide net to educate my community, because everything starts with awareness. And my focus specifically is on young families and business owners, because they're the ones that have the most to lose if the worst case scenario happens. Your kiddos need to be taken care of, and if you're incapacitated, so does your business. And I do this through both educational events, webinars, podcasts, blogs, and articles. And I actually have a podcast called Laws of Abundance, Legal Advice from an Angel. And there's nothing really legal about it other than the examples that I use, sometimes from my life, but most of it is metaphysical and talking about hermetic principles and how they apply. But that's just yet another way that I'm trying to get out there and reach people. And the main thing is that referrals, I call this the river of opportunity, that keep abundance flowing for all, because people don't generally decide to think about planning for their death unless they get a push. A friend says this was great. A financial advisor says do this 18 times, or they actually have to live through the mess of probate when a loved one dies or a friend dies, and they experience that viscerally. And so ultimately what I'm seeking with these families and business owners that I work with is what I call long-term relationship. I'm not focusing on delivering them documents or a particular transaction, but supporting their family and their business long-term. So going forward, onward and upward, I'm expanding myself and my footprint. So here I am networking and doing more outreach so that I can reach more families and more business owners. But I'm also expanding to be living in Florida and Washington. So I'm going to be bi-coastal and bringing on actually more support staff so that I can expand and not only serve more families, but serve myself better in my business without burnout. So that is a bit of my story right now. Here in 1 Million Cups, this presentation, or this partnership, this community, what I can do, or what the community can do for me is are these things, or these are kind of the questions I'm asking, which hopefully you guys have some thoughts and ideas on. So number one, I encourage all of you to come to an educational event and bring a friend who needs to plan. But mainly because these in-person events are super eye-opening. And the more people that come and just learn about the benefits of planning for themselves and their business, the better. And then ideas. Like, I'd love to hear, when you hear the words estate planning or think about this sort of thing, what are you doing? Because no one sits down and to their computer and Googles estate planning, and like, I want to find an estate planning lawyer. Like, so how do we get more conversations going about this really important topic? And last but not least, I'm looking to expand my viewpoint on what potential referral partners might be for me, because right now I work with the obvious, which are financial planners, but not every family or business owner has a financial planner. They're not there yet, because that's yet another thing on their to-do list. So, who are these potential folks that could be partners?
Nice.
This is my final slide. I was just going to leave it on.
Yeah. I like that quote.
I went so fast.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Why don't we do this? And thank you for the presentation. Good job, Angel. And what I'll do is, I know Dale had put some contact information for you in the chat. If you guys don't see that, please chat or let Dale know. But and why don't we switch it to questions? And Angel, if you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen, and then that way we can see people a little bit easier. If anybody has any questions or ideas that they want to throw up there, yeah, just raise your hand. See how Dale did that with the reactions tab and did it. Great. Dale, why don't you jump in for us?
Thanks for presenting, Angel. I really appreciated the overview of your business. So one of the things I was curious about is when you set expectations with folks who are new to this and coming to you, is this like a short-term or one-time engagement? Like, I didn't get the impression it was a one-time engagement, but I also know that at least from people I've talked with, estate planning tends to be like, okay, I'm going to get through the process of building a will or something, and I'm going to set it on a shelf, and it's going to go away for a decade or more, right? depending on your life circumstances. So I was just curious how your approach differs from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one of the biggest reasons estate plans fail for those that do have them is because they did it once 15 years ago or 30 years ago, set it on a shelf and forgot about it. And life and legacy planning is truly life and legacy planning. It is emergency planning and death planning, but it's not a one-stop do it and you're done. And so right up front, when I work with clients in the first session, which is just an educational awareness building session, they may or may not choose to engage. I talk about how this isn't one and done. Like, we're going for an outcome, but that in my work with them, that this is a relationship that's going to be there long term, and that if they're in a situation where their life is changing quickly, I encourage them to actually join my membership, which is we review their plan every year and make whatever changes are necessary. But at a minimum, all of my clients receive a review included in their flat rate fee for my services to draft their plan and all of the extraneous coaching that goes with that. We review it every 3 years and update it based on their current state. So I set that expectation that this is not one and done, and this is a long-term relationship that me and them will have. And so if I don't hear from them in 3 years, they're going to be hearing from me for us to look at that.
Great,
because again,
thank
that's
you.
one of the biggest areas where plans fail, is because their life changes and they didn't update the paperwork.
Got it. Appreciate it. Thanks for the explanation.
Totally makes sense. Leanne.
Hi, Angel.
Ah.
Sorry I joined late. I've been having some Zoom issues, and also it's been a weird morning. So when you were thinking about referral partners, a couple of things came to mind. Is people who would be complementary but not competitive with you, right? So when I think of when I'm going through major life changes, who those other people are, it'd be real estate agents, because then my estate changes, right? Marriages, so like wedding officiants or wedding coordinators, right? Because that's also something that could be gifted to somebody in a registry. Odd, but right, like, but also people are doing all of that paperwork and changing their names. It's a natural next step. in my experience. And then also divorce attorneys, same, because then that also has to be redone. But anything where major life changes, and also employers, some of the big, large corporations actually incorporate and do referrals to people such as yourself so that all of their employees have that taken care of. But what about maybe medium-sized employers don't have that package, but maybe they don't have to hire you on, but they can refer their employees to you. So job change, now they have a different income level, and then they want to set this up. That also is a natural transition for a lot of people. And also movers, right? So I remember when I first had mine set up, my parents encouraged me to do it because I was moving to New York City and they thought I was going to die. They were convinced. So they're like, you need to have set everything up and have a will and do all of these things. And so, and I was even in my 30s at that point, but they were just solely convinced. But I had gone through other life changes. So, but each time those life changes come up, that triggers a change in what I own and my financial income situation, all of that. So all of those things, I immediately think of what else do I have to change? So I don't know if that's helpful, or maybe you've already considered those things, but anything that goes hand in hand with a major life change typically. Oh, and one other thing I noticed with my family, like anytime when my nephew passed, he was right before he was 21, and losing a young person and a family is devastating in so many ways, but it also reminds all of us that no matter how young we are, it's important to have these things in place, because my brother was caught with no plan to lose a child. And so as much as nobody wants to think about that, having that in place for children, or young adults as they're, driving and things. So that may be something also.
Yeah, that's a great point, Leanne. I know that Angel, I know that you've met Christy. I know that she couldn't make it today. But she's a coach, a transition coach. And she's an ex-lawyer, so I'm sure you can connect with that. But I was just thinking, anybody that does any sort of transition coaching, essentially, that those people would also be. But that's a great point, Leanne. Thank you. Sid, did you have a question or an item?
Yes. Number one, I apologize about the video. I'm going to be presenting a marketing platform pretty soon. And with that, I wanted to kind of contribute what I have to what Angel presented. Number one is very powerful, is very deep. And I think it has a lot more meaning than just, hey, I need assistance on how to make my business successful and how can I make money. She has all this purpose behind it. And I wanted to say, if there's any kind of template type of legal template that people can use, because I'm an IT professional. My father was a criminal defense attorney in Seattle for about 10 years. And, I have friends in the law practice, etc. But I'm completely legally illiterate. I mean, despite, people are surprised, but IT guys are also surprised that, how does this pharmacist not know to, if he needs to make a PDF version of a website, to hit print and then print his Microsoft PDF. This guy's got an 8 years degree. But, everybody has their own expertise. So when in the legal field, I actually, completed my, a lot of kind of legal documents that, one requires in life. And it actually did have a spiritual drive behind it. Like there was a need, like a spiritual or like a religious tenet that, instigated it. Anyway, what I found helpful was like having some kind of templates or something that someone also feels involved in the process. So that basically is just what I would enter and interject into the conversation. Is number one, it was a beautiful presentation aesthetically and functionally. And I would just add that if you haven't already, to add some kind of templates where people feel they're already starting your process, already making traction, already working, and then they have you advise them, and they basically you've already started relationships with your website that you didn't even know, because you've had these templates that people are using, and then eventually if they get stuck, or they call you. But yeah, the legal process escapes a lot of us, but I just wanted to say that was a very beautiful presentation, and you have a very deep spiritual reason for your business. And then number two, from my experience, that these legal matters can be very, very pedantic,
Mhm.
so that when the IT guy does submit his summons and complaints, it gets rejected after 2 weeks, and then he calls Angel and says, I apologize, can you help me?
Yeah. So that's a good point. Yes, thanks for bringing that up. The Angel, do you have like something that's like gets people started then potentially?
Yeah, so if you're a first visitor to my website, actually, you're going to get a pop-up of an opportunity to watch a short webinar, visit video of me talking about why you should estate plan, essentially, and all of the different pitfalls and things that people don't think about. And then you get invited to essentially book what is called a life and legacy planning session with me. But when you book that session, it's complimentary because you do pre-work, and that pre-work is actually the essential piece that is the biggest heavy lifting for everybody in this process, and gets the individual really involved. Because if they do that work, they're going to become more financially organized and more kind of just, you'll have a perspective of what you have, both as far as a wealth inventory or an asset inventory, but also your spiritual, family, and business assets. So that pre-work is really a questionnaire that gets people thinking, like, who are the people in my life that I care about and that would take care of my children if you have children, or that would take care of my business if you have a business and I'm not there, and then what do I actually have, and by people just doing that homework, even if they don't engage in planning with me, they are 50% further along in the journey. And if they died tomorrow, someone would have something to go off of that says, these are all the people in my neighborhood and my stuff, which honestly, when people die without any plan, or even when they do have a plan in place, one of the most obvious things is the inventory of where are my accounts, like what do you actually own. I have a colleague who's a lawyer in California right now. Their family did have a trust, but there's no asset inventory. So the trust is like, I give these things to these people, but what things are you giving? And so yeah, the number one thing I engage people with is to get them thinking about who are the people, stuff, and things in my life. So that in that life and legacy planning session, we're having a conversation in context of their family dynamic, as well as what they actually have, because we want to custom plan specifically around that. And I want to be honest with them about what their situation is. If if something happened to them tomorrow, this is what the default plan would be based on their current state. And the other part about that, it gets people away from the legalese, because a lot of people do have that experience. They're like, oh, well, I talked to an estate planning attorney and they said all of this complex words at me, and it just turned me off, and I left, and then they sent me a bill for $1,000. And so I'm like, we're not talking about what is the legal outcome you want. I want to hear what your hopes, dreams, and fears are. And I will make the law work as a tool for you to support that. But it's not about me educating you pedantically about what this, that, and the other thing is, because nobody in their right mind likes actually reading the words that make a trust. Like, I can't even understand the trust that my legal stuff like spits out, but it's just legally required words. What we're going for is, okay, the outcome you want, and then we'll create the documents and the containers to do that outcome based on your words and what your heart says. So
Got it.
I really like the idea of there being more engaging things on my website. So maybe something like a survey, or getting people into that pre-work, even if they don't necessarily sign up for Life and Legacy.
Yeah.
They can do that on their own.
Yeah.
And then maybe that will motivate them to want to actually have a session with me to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah,
So
it's-
it's an opportunity to do
and-
it before they sign up.
Yeah, and maybe they're going through that checklist of all the different things that might trigger them revisiting their plan, like Leanne brought up, like this is the checklist of all the things, and they can remember that. So speaking of Leanne, you had a follow-up.
I do. I also just, you as you're talking, I really hear the other things that really, to me, set you apart in what you're doing. And what really stands out to me is the human connection and the personal touch that comes with this. And what I see a lot of people doing is creating contactless apps and templates and things like that. And I know from my own experience in creating, and this is just me talking in my experience, but I personally tend to seek out people who have a human connection when it comes to things this personal, because finance is very personal to me. And there's things like LegalZoom that are at our fingertips that kind of have that market when it comes to automated legal help, which is great for some things. But I think there's also a lane for that human connection and the one-on-ones that you offer, because I find that when everything is so automated, I just had this experience with a company where I answered the questions in their chat box and then set an appointment. And then before my appointment, I had to ask 20 questions. And then they referred me to somebody else and set an appointment. And he wanted 20 more questions. I thought my brain was going to explode. I'm like, if I don't talk to a person and like in the next email, like get an actual person, I'm done with this company. Because I don't want to be transferred around. I don't want to be passed off. And I'm not a one size fits all for everything that I do. And I feel like that's lost on a lot of the bots and the automated systems. And sometimes I just need to ask a question that could take care of. And I love that you offer that. And if you do offer that, and that's what sets you apart, I don't know if you're already doing this, so forgive me, but if maybe you're considering like showing like, this is how I'm different from the other things that are available. I can do these things, but I'm not going to try and shove you in a one size fits all box or a one size fits all template, because although that works for a lot of people, and maybe it's not your customer. So maybe there's other specialty areas, because it sounds like with the spiritual aspect of it and stuff, that's a human touch. And therefore that's kind of you. What I'm hearing is like, that's your thing. That's your differentiating factor of why I want to go with you versus somebody else. Because I know when I call, I'm going to talk to a real person. I know that when I talk to you, you're going to focus on me, not the mass. And I think, and when I'm spending that kind of money and it's my legacy leaving behind, that's super important. Sorry, that kind of came to mind as I was hearing you. I'm like, oh, I would totally go with a person over a bot any day on anything.
Yeah, and that's a big part of actually the training with the new law business model is to teach lawyers that we're not competing with the legal Zooms and other transactional things out there, because no one can take away the ability for us to be trusted advisors and create relationships with other human beings. Though a lot of lawyers need training on actually how to relate to other human beings. I've been very successful because I didn't need that additional training. I came in with a heart-based desire and practice, which is one of the reasons why that school of lawyers was starting to use me as an example of how you do this, because I've commingled this both mindset and metaphysical aspect with the legal practice, which is a model for other lawyers, because that heart is really, and that human connection is where, and what people are really seeking, and makes the interaction and the long-term relationship with their lawyer one that actually makes me part of people's families, right? And so part of my why I do outreach as my first way is that's one of the best ways where I can show people that this is a human connection and I'm different. Because it is with, you can do it in videos, you can't do it in worksheets. But anybody who's going to actually book a life and legacy planning session with me speaks with my my well-trained assistants, and they're going to tell them why this process is going to be different. And why we're going to have them do this, homework, and why I'm going to spend 2 hours with them in the life and legacy planning session before I even have them commit to planning. That in fact, I will give them that 2 hours of my time. If they choose not to plan, I still feel good that they have that information and the empowerment that that's going to give them about their life. And so getting people to understand that, they're like, wow, I'm going to get 2 hours of time with an attorney for free, like to talk about just me. And yes, that is, you're not engaging and committing to anything. We will do your design and all of that in that session if you so want to, but it's not necessary. It's really just me being there as an opportunity for them to think about what's going on. But yeah, it's hard to initially get people to that point for them to even realize or trust that that's what's happening. Had a number of people, they're like, oh, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to commit to planning. And it's like, no, this is actually a service for you to just talk with me about what your life state is.
Yeah, I think given how much hard sell stuff is out there, Angel, and like, I think about, I think everybody has a horror story of, oh, I was signed up for this free thing, but then it turned into this, horrific sales pitch. That's
Right.
probably why you have people who are very shy about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, which is why referrals and outreach are really the best ways for people to get in, because then they get to be in my energy, or they've heard somebody else who's experienced it, so then they can trust that they're
Right.
not put into a sales pitch that's 2 hours long.
Yeah.
Because I'm not selling them anything.
Nice. So Ed, did you want to share some information or something
No,
on that? Oh,
you got, everybody's already seen my the marketing platform that I'm going to be presenting, but I wanted to, because my video's not going, and I wanted to be fair, and also be on video, but literally the physical cameras are pushed in, but
misunderstood.
yeah, I apologize. But that's what I wanted to do. But I want to agree with Leanne, and I want to disagree with my IT approach to what I recommended about templates. That this is a deeply that what Angel is doing. It's a very relationship based thing. I mean, and an IT template is not the place for IT templates. I just recommended that because I was going through a legal tenant case where they're trying to evict someone, and the lawyer was basically not doing the process serving, and it's something that I could have done myself, blah, blah, blah. But what Angel is doing is something completely different. It's very deep.
Mhm.
And it's not as legal Zoom or template thing. And so I want to agree with Leanne, disagree with myself.
Right. Okay. All right.
I just want to put that out.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks.
So Ali, to your credit though, having some kind of something that might entice people to engage with you in a comfort level. So a survey or a worksheet like that might, to get people thinking, it is something I think I can add to the folks that aren't going to watch the video, right?
Yeah.
So
And
Yeah,
and people can check out that webinar. So we did that. So anyway, why don't we jump into
Can I make a comment? This is Shirley.
Oh yeah, Shirley, go ahead. Yeah, we'll do
Leanne
one.
had
we'll do one last
invited.
thing. Mhm.
I'm down in California in Irvine.
Oh,
And
okay.
Leanne had invited us, and I just want to add a suggestion. I'm in California, and I have my trust with a group that combines financial planning and taxes. so that you basically have a one-stop shop, because the financial planner will work with your tax advisor, and then they could, minimize the tax planning where you're paying taxes every year, and then you will work with your heirs so that they basically go to one place. So if you can find someone that you can develop a long-term relationship in your area, so that you bundled the three disciplines together, so that you create that one-stop shop. Because I think that model works really well, because obviously you got to do tax every year and do your financial review, and then you have your estate, so that they can all access the information. And then when you die, there's a place that your beneficiaries can go to and get that done without having to run to different places. So I think it's a good model. And if you wanted to, because you said you already have financial plan or partnership, but having a tax person. So basically what they do is, if they're managing your finances, you can get your tax done free. And or the financial planners pay the tax people. And then you can do your educational events together, so that you leverage the educational value. So it just suggestion if you wanted to consider it, because I think it's a good model. The bigger financial planning companies said they can't do it, because I used to be with UBS, and they said, well, we can't offer you free taxes, and they can't combine with other group. But as a small entity, you can do that on your own. So just a suggestion if you want to consider it.
Nice.
Death
Thank
and
you.
taxes, the two things people love to think about.
Yes.
Why not combine them?
Sure. Thanks, Shirley, for that. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And thanks for joining us from California. See, doesn't matter where you are, you can jump in. So with that, thank you very much, Angel, for the presentation. Obviously, it inspired a lot of thought from people. So I'm going to wrap up the official part. So if you are interested in presenting, just like Angel, jump in, click on the link, and you can present. There's that link to present is on the link tree. So, if you go to the link tree, there's a button for apply to present.